He raised her kids, paid their bills, and stood by their mother for 25 years, only to be left with nothing at the will reading. But what her children didn't know was that the real inheritance hadn't even been read yet. As mourners gathered for the reading of Margaret Hollis's will, Robert sat quietly in the back, never expecting the truth to shatter decades of loyalty in a single sentence. The room was still, save for the subtle hum of the ceiling fan and the soft shuffle of papers. Afternoon light streamed through tall windows, casting a golden hue across the polished oak furniture of the downtown law office. Leather-bound law books lined the walls like silent witnesses. A silver tray of untouched coffee and shortbread cookies sat forgotten near the reception desk. Robert sat slightly apart from the rest, his large hands folded in his lap, his dark suit crisp and pressed. His posture was dignified, but his eyes were tired, carrying the weight of a man who had given far more than he'd ever received. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His presence alone told a story the others refused to see. Across the room sat Margaret's 3 children. Evelyn, Peter, and Lucas, dressed in black, but radiating impatience rather than grief. Their murmured whispers paused only when they cast sidelong glances toward Robert. Cold, calculated, as if he were a stranger, not the man who had helped raise them. They'd never called him Dad, not even once. Evelyn, the oldest, tapped her manicured nails against her phone screen, scrolling idly as the lawyer shuffled through papers. Peter kept checking his watch while Lucas leaned back in his chair like he owned the room. They didn't acknowledge Robert. They never really had, but Robert remembered everything. Driving Evelyn to college when she refused to fly. Quietly paying off Peter's defaulted car loan. Rebuilding Lucas's failed coffeehouse dreams using a second mortgage on his own home. Through it all, he stood by Margaret, never once questioning her love or her loyalty. But even love, Robert had learned, could come with caveats. Margaret had been his wife for 25 years. 2.5 decades of quiet dinners, shared dreams, whispered reassurances. She'd told him more than once that he was her anchor. Yet now, seated in a room filled with legal documents and long-held resentments, Robert felt like driftwood. He glanced down at his wedding bond, a simple gold circle that had never left his hand. He thought of their courthouse ceremony, where only Margaret's best friend had shown up. Her kids had refused. "It doesn't matter," he'd said back then. "What matters is us." And for years, that was enough. But today, surrounded by expensive fabrics and expensive silence, Robert couldn't ignore the chill pressing against his ribs. He had never been accepted by her children. They tolerated him, smiled when it served them, but never embraced him. He wasn't one of them. He didn't have the pedigree. He didn't come from money. What he had was loyalty, decency, and love. The lawyer cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming. We are here today to honor the last will and testament of Margaret Eloise Hollis." Robert's chest tightened. She'd insisted he call her Maggie. Sweet, simple. Theirs. He glanced at the children. Evelyn looked like she was already bored. Lucas seemed to be calculating the monetary value of every asset. Peter just looked like he had somewhere else to be. Robert hadn't come for money. He came for closure. But deep down, a whisper of unease crept in. Something felt wrong. The lawyer began. "To my beloved daughter, Evelyn, I leave the lake house in Vermont along with all furnishings." Evelyn's smirk returned instantly. Robert remembered spending months restoring that house by hand. It had been Margaret's favorite retreat and his labor of love. "To my son, Peter," the lawyer continued, "I leave my investment portfolio valued at approximately $900,000. Along with my shares in Hollis Ventures." Peter exhaled with quiet relief. Robert remembered Margaret saying she would only sell those shares in an emergency. To Lucas, the attorney read on, "I leave the heirloom jewelry passed from my grandmother as well as the vintage Buick which Robert so lovingly kept running all these years." Robert blinked. He thought of those long afternoons under the hood, oil-stained hands, and Margaret's smile when the engine purred again. Lucas never even drove it. Each line of the will felt like a chisel against Robert's ribs. He didn't want the things. He wanted to matter. As the will moved to distant cousins and forgotten acquaintances, even they received keepsakes. And still no mention of him. It had started with a kitchen renovation 30 years ago. Margaret had been newly divorced, guarded and sharp, but kind. Love didn't come all at once. It came in coffee cups and folded blankets, in silent understanding and quiet partnership. Her children called him the handyman. Margaret defended him once, then slowly stopped in favor of peace. Still, he stayed. Still, he gave. Tuition, bills, birthdays, graduation parties. Never once asking for recognition. The lawyer cleared his throat again. We are nearing the conclusion. A few final notes. Robert straightened, heart thudding. To my loving husband, Robert, I leave my gratitude. The room froze. Gasps sliced the air. The ceiling fan buzzed like static. Evelyn turned slowly. Peter's lips curled. Lucas snorted. Robert didn't move. Didn't speak. His fingers twitched. 25 years, and all he received was a breath on paper. He stood, adjusted his coat, didn't give them the pleasure of seeing him break. As he walked out, his hand brushed his face once. Outside, the sun had lost its warmth. He wandered the city in silence, past the bank they once visited, past the florist where he bought her tulips every spring, past everything that once meant something. Now it felt hollow, empty. 3 days passed. He didn't answer calls. He didn't return to the house, which was now Evelyn's. He stayed in a motel across town, surrounded by packed boxes and silence. Then, the 4th morning, a knock. No one at the door. Just an envelope. His name. Her handwriting. His hands trembled. He sat, opened the letter. My dearest Robert, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I fear I've broken your heart. Please let me explain. I wanted to leave you everything. You deserved it. But the kids came to me with threats. If I left you anything, they'd fight it. Call you a manipulator. They promised to smear you in court. I was afraid. Not of them, but for your peace. So I made a choice. 2 wills. The one they heard? A decoy. I wanted to see who they'd become when they thought they'd won. I wanted you to see it too. The real will is in the enclosed envelope. Inside is the trust one created in your name, the house, the stocks, the art, the savings. Everything. You never asked for anything. But I built it all for you. You gave me love, dignity, a safe place to land. This is my return gift. Forgive the show I left behind. Forever yours, Maggie. Tears blurred the ink. He opened the second envelope. Legal documents. Notarized, signed. A trust in his name. Property deeds. Bank details. And a mission statement, the Robert Foundation scholarships and support for stepfathers and guardians in blended families. He cried. Finally. Not out of pain, but out of release. He didn't call the children. He activated the foundation. Applications came in from all walks of life. He listened to stories like his. Men who loved, gave, and were forgotten. Until now. Weeks later, Evelyn showed up with a realtor, Lucas and Peter in tow. They came to evict him. He was waiting on the porch, trust documents in hand. I'd ask you to sit, he said, but this won't take long. They read in silence. Faces drained. Rage giving way to silence. You can inherit money, he said, but character is earned. They left without a word. That night, Robert walked through the home that was now rightfully his. He framed Margaret's letter above the mantel. Not a trophy. A reminder that love doesn't always roar. Sometimes it leaves a whisper. A plan. A legacy. And finally, Robert understood. She hadn't forgotten him. She'd saved the best for last.